Awesome. So you should be able to see my first slide. All right. So I'm so excited to be here with you today, tonight, whenever this is, or wherever you are right now. Um, so just a couple of things I want to let you know ahead of time. We are going to, at the end, I'm going to be sharing with you this beautiful new offer that I've put together. And it has been literally just like gestating inside of me and inside of my mind and my community for the last several years as I've tried to really hone in on how I can serve moms best. And so this offer has been like the thing that has been the way that I really truly think that I can be able to serve busy moms the best. So I'll share more about it later. And then even like cherry on top that I'm so excited about, there's another really special offer that I want to share with you that goes in conjunction with this new one. And you only get access to that if you watch through the whole thing here, and you you look out for the email after this. So I just want to give you that. And then I think that's pretty much it. So we're going to actually start off today with a nervous system practice. This one is so simple and easy. You can literally do it any time of day, in the middle of the day, in the middle of the night when you're up and like your mind is running around and you're trying to sleep, but your body's like, oh, I'm going to try and buy this, this couch or whatever that I, don't really need to worry about right now, but now I'm worrying about it. So you can do that. You can use it when you're like, you've got a headache. You can use it when your body just feels kind of meh, or you feel like you've been really stressed out for a long time. There's so many different reasons to use this, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But what we're going to do is called the occipital release. And this is a practice that has been used essentially, like the whole point of it is to allow for the nerves to run through out of the spine and into the neck, and down into the body in a more free moving way, so that you have essentially better information going through. It's like, how are you supposed to get out of stress, or how are you supposed to like send a good signal if you don't have all the bars on your phone? Like if you're trying to download something, you have to hold your phone like way out, to the side of you. It makes it harder to get the signal. And so that's essentially what this helps you do. So what we're going to do is you just bring your hands behind your head here, and that you're aiming for the back of your skull, right? Essentially where the nape of your neck is, the hairline kind of is. But you should feel like the back of your skull and your neck, and your arms are going to be out. Now, if you do have shoulder injuries, or this bothers your shoulders, or whatever it is, like you don't have to do this with both your arms. So like if your left arm hurts, you can bring your left arm down. So we're going to start here, and you just barely place your hands here. It is all about quiet, gentle touch for this one. And what you're going to do, and you can literally just hold your hands here, but if you want to make it a little extra effective, what we're going to do is you're going to just gently pull the skin. I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit here, but you're going to pull the skin over to your right side. Your face is going to stay in front of you, and you're going to use your eyes to look over at your right elbow. And then we're just going to take a moment to be quiet and listen and notice what's going on inside of our body right now. What might be happening to your breath, your heart rate, your mind. And what you're looking for is either your body feels like it just kind of goes, ah, and relaxes. You might sigh just like that, or you might feel like you need to swallow. Or if your eyes are just getting really tired, you can come back through center. So when you're ready, you can come back through center. If you need to give yourself a little eye rub, you can, or blink your eyes a couple times. And then we're going to take it to the other side. So you're going to gently stretch over away from your left side. So you're going to be moving towards your right. And then you're going to look to your left elbow. And we're just going to hold it here. Same thing again, noticing what might be happening in your body. And if you get that sigh right away, you can come back through center. If you feel a swallow coming on or yawn. Those are all signs that your nervous system is calming down. So go ahead and come back through center. You can give yourself a little shake and just notice how you're feeling right now. So what that does is it's communicating with your nervous system through what's called the proprioceptive network. That basically just tells your body where you are in time and space. So there's a bunch of receptors that say, oh, this is stretched here, that is lengthened there, this is contracted over here. So am I upright or am I leaning to the side? Am I balancing? So it helps with a lot of balance stuff. But what it does is it helps those muscles release around the base of your skull. And around the base of your skull is where your vagus nerve comes out. And your vagus nerve goes down your neck into your gut and back up and ends in your ears. And what it does is it basically tells your body to move into and out of your stress response. So rest and digest, fight or flight, or total shutdown. So freeze, fawn, all these different things that as you dive into nervous system healing, you'll learn more about. So that one I use all the time. You can take it a little bit further if while you're here, you take your head, you don't want to turn, so you're not looking at your shoulder, you're actually just tilting to the side, and you look over to your right, the shoulder that you're tilting towards, and then you go back to the other side and you look down at the same shoulder you're tilting towards, and then you come back through, and then when you go to the other side, you look away. And then same thing on the other side that way. And your eyes are connected to the muscles right around the base of your neck. So if you get a lot of tension headaches when you do this, it can also really help get rid of those headaches. So that is like a triple bonus, amazing practice that you can do on a regular basis. I've used it and put myself back to sleep in that like dreaded 2:00 wake up time when things just don't want to go right in the middle of the night. And I've used it to help calm me down, all kinds of things. So that is one just to like use it all the time because it's amazing. Okay, so before we start diving into more of the meat of this, I want to just get your permission real quick to start off with some serious information. And if you're ready for that, you can type yes in the chat and we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Yes. So we're going to talk about why going from surviving to thriving is so important, and why this matters. So first, we're going to talk about co-regulation. So motherhood is one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences in our lives. Our children and our relationship act as mirrors and reflect where healing really needs to happen. Our words become their inner voice and the way that they view themselves later on. So the way that we behave gives them the template of how they should act later on in life. And not only that, but our nervous system literally becomes the blueprint of their nervous system. And so co-regulation is truly at the heart of positive relationships. And if we miss out on that in our childhood, we often have this huge gap or these wonky relationships later in life that often reflect how we were co-regulated or not co-regulated with in adulthood. And if we approach our motherhood, if we approach our life from a place where our nervous system isn't settled, where it's not adaptive, where it doesn't have a lot of capacity, that ends up reflecting in our children, right? And literally how our world is shaped for us in general. And so when we do that, when we start to regulate our nervous system, we can then speak to our children in the way that we want to. And when we speak to our children, as if they are the wisest, kindest, most amazing, beautiful, intelligent creatures on the planet, that's who they will become. And so that's part of the reason why this is so, so important for us. And then when we go into this deeper, right, we talk about attachment, and attachment for a baby is literally the security and safety that they need to survive. Without it, they don't have that. And how we respond to them is what their attachment style becomes. And our own attachment style literally impacts the way that we parent. And so it's important for us to start addressing those underlying things so that way our attachment styles, one, shift and become really healthy. And then that becomes, again, their blueprint for how they show up in life. When we as a parent have an insecure attachment with our child and we don't show up in coherence with them. So what that means is when they're crying and they want attention, they're trying to make eye contact, or they are, reaching out to us and we don't respond. And I am not saying that you're a bad mother because, we have dysregulated nervous systems. But what ends up happening is our dysregulated nervous system does not allow us to show up in the way that we really truly want to for our kids and what's going to be the best for them. And so whenever like I'm out in the world and I see moms who are just really struggling, right? And they're saying things to their kids that aren't so nice, and they're telling like, be quiet, or I'll give you something to cry about, right? Like those are things that, number one, they probably didn't just come up with on their own, right? Like we as mothers learn from our mothers and our fathers, or whoever those caregivers were, right? And so that became our subconscious pattern. And so it's our job to change that. And of course, I don't know how many places I've heard this now, but when as I was going through this whole healing process, the truth of it's not our fault, but it is our responsibility, it just continues to ring true. And so that is our job, is to heal those deep attachment wounds, those deep nervous system places, those parts of ourselves that are wounded, those inner children that need the love, that need the space, right? Because otherwise that shows up in everything else in our lives and our children's lives. So this is so impactful because 1 out of 5 mothers struggle with mental health after they have, or once they're adjusting after postpartum, right? Or during postpartum. And this literally becomes one of the worst complications post-pregnancy because of so many factors, right? Like we don't have the support networks, we aren't getting full nutrition, we aren't getting the rest we need, we've got all kinds of toxins and things in our environment that are like, causing all of this stuff. And so why this is important to approach from not just a nervous system perspective and not just a community perspective, but also the environmental impact and all those other things, is because truly, like women are the canaries in the coal mine. We are the ones who show up with the issues first, and usually more drastically than, our male counterparts. And so it's so important for us as mothers to be the ones who really say, no, it's time for me to take care of myself, because truly, I really do need to show up for my kids in the best way that I possibly can. So when we reclaim our well-being and step into our full power, we truly create a world that supports and sustains us all. And literally the most impactful things for our adjustment in the world is literally feeling like we are unconditionally loved and unconditionally supported, that we are being comforted in times of distress, having authentic relationships, not just, like, oh, you need to stay positive relationships, or not just complaining about your husbands or whatever it is, but really true, authentic, like I can do both. I can complain, but then we can build each other up, right? Or I can vent when I need to, and then they're going to be like, I totally see you. It is really hard, that validation, right? That safety, and having a safety and connection. And then of course, supportive friendships, because friendships are the best. And so the reality is that self-care, as it's sold to us, is it doesn't go deep enough. And it's not just about spa days or, surface level habits. It's about truly healing our nervous systems, breaking generational cycles, and creating a foundation of true well-being for not only ourselves, but our family. When we tend to our inner wounds and nourish our bodies and build practical supportive systems, we create sustainable change. Self-care is not just another task on the to-do list. It is not just another responsibility that we need to like add to our plate. It's a structure that allows everything else to flow. I think about the imagery of like the pond and a stream, and if there's a bunch of algae like growing, or there's a bunch of plant material, or like rocks in the way, the stream can't flow, right? And on the opposite side of that, if we don't have anything, like if we don't have any boundaries, if we don't have any structures in our life, the water will just go everywhere and we won't be able to hold enough of the water literally to keep ourselves alive, right? So it's so important to learn those balances between the structure and the free flowing. And so as we go through this, we're going to talk about some of those reasons why that isn't happening and why it can be so hard to do. Okay, so we're going to talk about me for a little bit. My name is Beth. I am the founder and caretaker of Althea Farah Wellness. So Althea Farah means wild healing. And so to me, this is literally us returning to our roots and coming back to our own inherent value, our own inherent worth, our own inherent power that we have, our grace, our love, all of these beautiful characteristics that we have that we can tap into. We just need help getting there a lot of times. I help empower women to really like create a life that they love, that sustains them and supports them and helps them access their personal power so they can set boundaries and clear out things that don't need to be there anymore and nourish themselves and create long-lasting, sustainable self-care habits and relationships and all the above, right? Like this is a very holistic approach to all of it. My goal is to have you have a life that gives back to you just as much as you give to everyone else. And really what I specialize in is that piece of like, why aren't we doing the things we know we need to do? And helping you break out of that cycle. For me, I have been in the wellness industry since around 2011. I started teaching yoga. I taught yoga. I've done personal training, corrective exercise. I've done coaching stuff. Oh my gosh, what else have I done? I ran a gym. I've done, massage therapy and somatic body work for a decade now. And I take all these things plus more, plus real life experiences, and put them all together so that you have access to a wide variety of modalities and practices and beautiful things that you can use for yourself and that I've used for myself. And so one of the last things I really want to share about myself before I get into like my story is that like foundationally, I reject the idea that mothers just need to hustle harder and we supplement more to do all of it. Instead, we need to take things off of our plate and repair what's been broken and stop tying our worth to how much we achieve. I believe that the frustration and exhaustion and overwhelm that mothers are feeling isn't a personal failure. It's a natural response to living in a system that does not support us. And it was never designed to support us in the first place. That's a whole other soapbox. But my approach integrates nervous system healing and practices because real transformation happens when the inner and the outer worlds are aligned. Healing isn't just about mindset shifts or a spiritual practice. It's about making tangible, sustainable changes in your daily life. And if we only focus on the emotional work without addressing the external reality, we stay stuck in these loops and cycles. And if we only focus on productivity without healing, we totally burn ourselves out. So by addressing both or all aspects of ourselves, we close the energy gaps, these leaks that keep mothers trapped in cycles of depletion. And so I want to invite you into a little bit about my story. And just in case, I might say a couple of bad words sometimes. So if you need to put your headphones in, go ahead and do that. Otherwise, if you don't care, don't worry about it. I'm not going to do anything crazy, but I just want to give you a heads up. So children can and will trigger some of our deepest wounds and reflect back to us the places that we truly need healing. They literally express what we are suppressing. I don't know if you've noticed it, but I know that when I'm in a bad mood, my kids start to like have a whole mess of a day, right? And the hardest part of mothering is changing our own patterns when we have less than ideal roadmaps for how to do this, right? Or how it quote unquote should be done. I often find myself reflecting on how I was often told not to do something or stop doing that, but I was never told what to actually do instead. And in this new version of motherhood that I wanted to create, I needed to replace the like, don't do that, or because I told you so, and the punishment-based parenting styles and tactics, to more aligned ones for me that felt like they were going to literally help my children build the resilience and confidence and trust and safety and not fall into the same traps that I had fallen into, right? And I struggled for a really long time, and I still strive to find new ways that are more aligned with that new way of being. And the biggest block, I know for a fact every single time, that it comes down to my own emotional wounding, my own experiences, and my own subconscious beliefs that have pulled me into a stressed out, triggered state that isn't really making me proud a lot of times. So when I think about those emotional wounds and I top that with relationship dynamics that have caused a lot of stress and struggle, I was totally not being the mom that I wanted to be. But I knew that if I kept allowing life to go the way that it was going, that my girls would literally, like, at its core, be getting my permission to experience the same things in life. And I knew that my state directly impacted how my children are doing. And I realized that I often was holding some of the same patterns of like my parents were holding, or some of the emotional wounds triggered, or any of that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to make that shift into a more easeful, confident, healthy life that, and I knew they were going to thrive in as well. So into the deep internal work that I went, and spoiler alert, finding out that pretty much everything in my life reflected some deep held beliefs that I was holding about myself and my value. And we're going to get into that much more in a little bit. But after almost losing the fight for my marriage, because my husband's own trauma, and because of conditioned responses and my own wounding, and pulling myself up and out of that and getting the help I needed and the support I needed, I can say that the inner work makes all the difference for you, for your children, for your relationships, for money, for so much more. So on that note, we're going to dive into this more. So our mothering experience, how familiar does this sound? There's often this gap between where we want to be with our motherhood and where it actually is. So type in the chat how you would rate your motherhood journey right now, making sure to account for and consider not only like how you're feeling as a mother, but your own personal fulfillment, as well as your relationship with your kids or your partner on a scale from 1 to 10. If you are at a 1, you're like, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm drowning, I don't even like anybody, I don't like who I am, I don't want to deal with any of it anymore, I'm done, right? I'm barely keeping my head above the water. And 10 is like, I'm absolutely amazing, I love my partner, I love my relationship, even if I don't have a partner, I'm freaking doing well, I'm strong, I have all the support I need, right? So you get the point. And so I want you to take a moment to write that down and feel into it. Notice, just take a moment to notice, like, where does that show up in my body? Do I feel it in my heart? Do I feel it in my gut? Do I feel it on my shoulders, my head? Do I feel some tension in my head? Do I feel guilty? Do I feel shameful? Do I feel frustrated? And then we're going to dive into kind of how these gaps show up in life. Okay, so common motherhood feelings, things that I've often heard from mothers, I've said myself, and they're just repeated all the time, are things like, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough energy, I don't have enough support, I don't know what will actually help me to break out of these patterns. I'm not controlling my emotions enough, I'm not managing my time well enough, I'm not getting enough done, my house isn't clean enough, my kids aren't involved in enough things. Or they're not doing well enough in school because I don't have time to help them, or I can't ask for help, I don't feel right asking for help. My kids seem like they're doing well, but honestly, I don't feel like I have anything left for my marriage or myself. So what I would love for you to do is these, or anything else you can think of, you can type that in the chat and just let me know if that resonates with you. Ooh, yes, I'm seeing I don't have enough support. Ooh, time. I don't have enough time. Oh, I can't ask for help. Yes. So those are all so common, and you are not alone in that. Okay, so what is really causing all of this massive overwhelm and burnout? And it might not be what you think. So, collectively, as a whole, women's health has been neglected. Like, we know that it has just been super recently that they've even added women into scientific studies on health and well-being, and like so little of a percentage goes towards literally researching and funding research for women's health and well-being. We've been through a lot, like thousands of years of a lot. And that's not joking. That's not kidding. That's literally what has happened. So toxic patriarchal systems have essentially oppressed and suppressed women's experience and wisdom for a long time. And we've moved, because of those types of systems, we've moved away from the village and into this really individualistic, toxic masculine version of society. And that is not to say that all men are bad. That is not to say that the masculine isn't important, because masculinity helps give us structure and systems, and it helps build a container and give us boundaries. It also helps move us forward and take action. And so that's the more active piece of this, right? And so that's part of this healing journey, is getting in connection with both of them, and really learning how to balance both of these masculine and feminine principles together. And then our cultural expectations don't match the reality of our situation, right? Like, I got to take my kids to school. I got to work full time. I got to take care of the house. I got to have a Pinterest worthy house or an Instagram worthy house. I got to do da, 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 da. I got to make sure that I'm furthering my career. And then I also have to make sure that I'm taking enough time to rest, and that, I am always happy and I'm never sad, or whatever it is, right? Or like, I have to be sad and I can't, whatever it is, whatever the things are, right? We know that our expectations don't match up with the reality of the situation. We are not living by our natural cycles. We're just starting to really regain and get a grip on some of these things that we've lost for so long. And then, because of this consequence, the air we breathe and our own individual experiences, our nervous systems are fried. We are exhausted and burnt out, and not without reason. Like, this is so important for us to just let go of shame of being exhausted and tired. Like, it is absolutely, it absolutely makes sense that we are tired and burnt out. It just does. And we're going to talk more about that too. But we've inherited collective trauma and beliefs around what a good mom is, and what it is and what it isn't, right? We've learned to survive in a world through our experiences, and often the behaviors that we are doing are no longer serving us anymore, because as we grow up, again, going back to those attachment styles, going back to the way our nervous system develops, we come up with these coping mechanisms, these choices, these behaviors that allowed us to survive when we were younger. And then they're no longer helpful now. So as an adult, when our brain is fully developed and we have the capability to actually look at things a different way, then we can start shifting things. And we've been operating in broken systems for a really long time, right? Like, I don't know about you, but I'm all here for bringing the red tent back. Like, please, I know that there's some negativity to that, but also I'll take a week of maybe my husband bringing me food and like chilling out in a tent, quote unquote. So let's talk a little bit more about this. Let's dive in a little bit more. So oftentimes in our society, the way that it is run is that our productivity is tied to our worth, and some other lies as well. And this shows up in many different ways. In the workplace, it shows up in us staying later, working too much overtime, taking on more tasks than what we were given and or told that was our job. We continue to work even when we're supposed to be postpartum, like we're supposed to be resting. 6 weeks is not enough, right? It just isn't enough. We're like barely stopping bleeding, and that doesn't even mean we're all the way done, so like that's a huge piece of this. And if you had any type of surgery or complications, that just adds to it. And not only that, like we we're supposed to be home with our baby, right? Like they're still like so attached to us. And then when we work through our cycle, exactly trying to do exactly the same amount of work throughout a whole month without changing anything we're doing, we, we lose out on opportunities because of taking off time for, having children and that kind of stuff. And often because of the cultural stuff, it shows up as like women aren't trusted as much. We have to over explain ourselves. Oftentimes we have to try to compete in this man's world for that kind of stuff. And again, things are shifting. More women are in the workplace. More women are making higher salaries than men. And so there's all kinds of things that are shifting and changing, but we're still dealing with cultural generational stuff that's stuck in there. In our mothering, we overextend ourselves. We break our budget for our kids or for, just stuff that's going on in life. If if our kids whine, we give them what they want, and not always, right? Like this is not 100%, but like then, if we don't have solid boundaries for ourselves and we try to set solid boundaries, we feel guilty. Or when we don't have solid boundaries and we lose it on our kids because we pushed ourselves past where our capacity is at, then of course we feel guilty. Or we get angry because no one is helping us manage the mental load, or we're overstimulated and we're feeling underappreciated. All of these things show up that way. In our relationships, we might keep score like, oh, you did the dishes, or like I did the dishes, so you should vacuum, or like I did the dishes for the last 5 times and you haven't touched the dishes, or what, whatever that is. We take on all of the invisible labor. We don't ask for help because, one, we don't really want to seem needy, or maybe we don't even know how to ask for help, or that maybe we might need help. We might tie our libido to our success in our relationship, or our husband might tie our libido to our success in our relationship. Or, again, we don't have solid boundaries with our partner. In our self-care, we wait for this perfect opportunity where we have time and energy to do something for ourselves. Or we might compare our own self-worth or our own self-care to others. So like if one mom who has older kids is going to the gym 3 days a week for an hour and a half each time, and we're like, I can barely get 20 minutes at home, but we have a toddler, or whatever it is, like our lived experience is different than theirs. We judge ourselves for that. Or maybe it's that you refuse to spend money on yourself and you'll buy your kids a bunch of new clothes, but you've been wearing the same ratty old bra for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. Or we drive through Starbucks because we're like, oh my gosh, I need a coffee because I'm exhausted in the middle of the day, but then we feel guilty about that too. But we won't go and spend maybe the same amount of money on a juice or a smoothie or something that would be really deeply nourishing, right? So it shows up in these just like sneaky ways. So I want to take a moment to dive into this with you specifically. So which of the beliefs that we talked about before resonate with you the most? We kind of already did this a little bit, but we're going to go back to that slide. And then I'm going to have you write down the belief. Or you can do, I wouldn't do more than 3. So let's just pick the top 3 that like are really hitting you hard right now. And then, or anything that comes up for you. So while you are looking at this list, go ahead and check and see, like, I don't have enough time. How does that feel in my body? How distressing does that feel? I don't have enough energy. Oh, like that might hit you in the gut, right? Or something like that. I'm not doing a good job as a mom. And then, right, feel that. So take a few moments once you have your stuff written out, at most 3. Don't overwhelm yourself. You don't need to do more than 3. Take a moment to write them out and then check in with how distressing they feel. Write anything that shows up for you. Where do you feel it in your body? Does it feel like tension? Does it have a color? Do you have any memories that are coming up? And I'm just going to give you a few moments to do this. We're going to do probably about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, and then you can always come back to this and write out more. And I want to also remind you that if anything is coming up that's big and too big for you to like really want to deal with right now, you can always put that in a container somewhere else. So a container can be anything. It's just something that you use in your imagination to take anything you are like, I don't got time, effort, or energy right now, for the space to really truly look at this the way it needs to be looked at, to give it the time it needs to be. And so I'm going to put that in the container, and it could be anything. It could be a box, it could be a ball, it could be a bubble, it could be whatever. And you just have a way of closing it up, and you can imagine putting it somewhere else, like up in your closet. You can imagine burying it in the ground. And anytime anything distressing, excuse me, comes up, you can just imagine that flying away, or if it's bubbles or whatever. And we can, that's another practice that I'll share with, I have shared with my mamas before, and it'll probably end up being inside of the offer that I have for you. Okay. So now that you have taken a moment to write those out, I want you to just take a deep breath and just give yourself a big hug and realize that, like, you're not alone in this. I want to emphasize that, like, these feelings are really true for you right now, but it doesn't always have to stay that way. We're going to dive into beginning to shift these in a moment, but I want to share with you the story about me shifting my beliefs around this, because it was really big. So it's time to enter into this portal, and this time for something new. We're going to check in with your own experience real quick. If you're like me, you've struggled with feeling guilty about taking time for yourself. Maybe you rush home after work because you felt like your hubby or whoever had the kids has spent all this time with them. And when I get home, everything is going to be in shambles, or I have to make dinner and it's, make sure everybody's homework is taken care of, and, the house is clean, and, right? Or maybe you're constantly feeling guilty because your emotional responses are less than ideal. Or maybe like maybe you're starting to feel resentful of your family because the housework doesn't feel equitable, or you feel underappreciated, or your husband he'll take time for himself to play video games or go to the gym or play D&D or whatever it is, without a second thought about the fact that you haven't been out of the house to do anything other than go grocery shopping for the last, I don't know, maybe several weeks or months. So a few years ago, I found myself completely depleted, physically, emotionally, mentally. I'd moved away from my family, so we moved 2 states away. I was hoping for a fresh start and a way to continue my own career. I was looking at doing a doctorate program, but instead I ended up feeling more isolated than ever. My marriage was struggling under the weight of infidelity, of alcoholism, depression. We were crammed into a tiny 2-bedroom apartment with 3 kids, 2.5. My oldest was with us part-time. 3 adults, 2 dogs, and a cat, while I desperately tried to hold everything together. My husband was literally gone 6 days a week, overnight, doing 12-hour shifts to pay for everything. But also there was all kinds of other things going on, right? I was fighting to keep the house clean, to get everyone else to step up and do their part to make things work. I had literally just had a new baby. My youngest one was born right kind of, well, actually we moved up there and I found out I was pregnant. So she was literally gestating through so much of this, right? And so now she has this huge emotional responses to things, which I think is partially like genetic, but also huge experience for her. And so the harder I tried to make everything better, the worse I felt and the less it worked. I was miserable. I was exhausted. I was losing weight in a way that was not healthy. My heart had been broken a bunch of times and I didn't know how much more I could take. But I promised myself I was going to be the bigger person. And that is exhausting. So one day it hit me. If I keep living like this, I won't make it much longer. And worse, I'm teaching my daughters that this is normal, that this is acceptable, and this is what they should tolerate in their own lives. That realization literally shook me to my core, and I knew it had to change, not just for me, but for them. If I wanted my daughters to grow up knowing their worth, setting boundaries, and fully living, I had to show them what it looked like. And no one was going to save me. I had to be the one to break the cycle. I had to be the one to say no and set the boundaries. That moment set me on a path of real healing, and not just surface level self-care, but deep, deep nervous system work that rewired how I showed up for myself and my life. I stopped trying to fix everyone else's problems, and I turned inward and nurtured the parts of me that had been running on survival mode for far too long. And it wasn't easy, but it changed literally everything in my life. My relationship with my husband healed. My kids are thriving. We're doing great. I have an incredible community of mothers and friends that truly support me. And now I help other mothers do the same thing. Because when we take care of ourselves and we take ourselves seriously, we do the work, and we don't just heal ourselves. We change everything for the next generation. So the truth is that this hectic rush to make sure that everyone else's needs are met, real or imagined, are that it's keeping us taking care of everyone else's needs, keeping us stressed out. We're unable to relax, and ultimately it takes away from our own ability to settle and actually enjoy our family. When we don't have the tools to help us feel safe creating and holding boundaries, how do we expect to be able to do that? We waste so much energy worrying about how everybody else is feeling, how everybody else is viewing us, that we often neglect our own needs. And ultimately, we end up tying our worth to how we are meeting these unrealistic expectations that are based on outdated systems, things that literally do not matter in the long run, that we've been gaslit and stonewalled into believing that our problem is with us and not the system we live in. So I want to dive into why it's so important to not just do like the goal setting that we normally do, those traditional, like, I'm going to not, I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to the gym 3 days a week, and I'm going to do whatever, right? So why does it not work? Why can we not develop this sustainable practice of self-care? And we're going to talk about how this happens, because our subconscious runs the show, truly and honestly. So why does perception equal reality? And this is called the manifestation cycle. I learned it from Kate Northrup. She's a beautiful human being. I love her very much. I love her work very much. She does a lot of work around money and wounding in that way, and nervous system healing in that way. So if you want to check her out, she's got a beautiful book called Do Less and Money, a Love Story, and trainings and all kinds of stuff. But so we're going to go through this manifestation loop with an example, because it makes a lot more sense to do it that way than try to explain what each of these is. So for example, if you wanted to stop yelling at your kids, normally people would focus on the outcome they wanted. So we would be talking about this outcome, right? I don't want to yell at my kids anymore, so I'm going to stop yelling at my kids. And they might go to this action, like, I'm not going to yell at my kids. I'm going to, I'm going to sit down and talk to them, whatever your action choice is. And then they might even go back to like the thought, like, okay, I'm going to maybe do an affirmation. Like, I enjoy the complexities of raising my children, and I have the capability to address issues without yelling, right? It might be like that. And so the reality is, is that, we set a goal, we might have a plan, and then, I'm not going to yell at my kids. I'm going to start off with 2 weeks straight. If we do like the SMART goal, even, and we're like, okay, if I do this for 2 weeks, I can do it for 4 weeks. And if I do it for 4 weeks, I can do it for a year or whatever, and by the end of, maybe like the first week or even the first day, we're back to doing the same thing that we did before. So then we're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, or I feel really bad about myself. And we wonder, like, what's wrong with me? Why am I getting so angry at my kids? Like, why don't they respect me? Why won't they listen? Da, 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 da. But the biggest block doesn't come from our actions. The biggest block doesn't even come from our mindset, like what we're thinking. It is so much farther back than that. The thing that really, truly impacts us is getting all the way back to our nervous system set point. And so we're going to skip a couple of these and then we'll come back to them as we go through this loop again. So when we look at our nervous system set point, our nervous system set point is literally created through the genetics that are passed down to us, the intergenerational trauma and belief system that we inherit, and then our own lived experience. And the whole point of nervous system, other than, making sure we're breathing less, well, literally part of it, is safety. And we get safety through connection. Humans need, it's not a want, need other people. When we're born without a mother or a father, we die. There's no survival without a caregiver to be there for us. And so our nervous system will forfeit personal well-being, our wants, our needs to be able to connect with somebody else. And this is why the attachment style is so important. And this is also why our nervous system healing is so important. And the way that we get to that is we go back through this loop, right? So for example, when we have an outcome, right? So when we have our outcome, the thing that's manifesting in our life, right? For example, our yelling at our kids. Our action is yelling at the kids. The outcome is us having a bad relationship with our kids or us feeling impatient or guilty or whatever, right? And we stop at our action and we say, okay, I'm not going to yell at them anymore, right? But then we might go back to our thinking. Our thinking is just like, okay, I'm not going to yell at them. I'm going to do this instead. What am I thinking when I'm yelling at them, right? And then our belief is that, whatever the kids are doing is not a good thing. So for example, if they're, neglecting their room to play video games, our belief around that is that they're being irresponsible, or that playing video games might be bad, or, whatever. Or the belief even about ourselves is that, like, what I want doesn't matter. And that belief is created through an emotional bodily response to what's happening in the world. And so our bodily response might be, or our emotion would be things like, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm feeling shameful, I'm feeling guilty, I'm feeling resentful, all those emotion words, right? And oftentimes we don't even maybe have words for what we're feeling. But that emotion is caused by our nervous system. And so our nervous system is picking up information all the time, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're smelling, and it's putting it through our subconscious. And our subconscious holds on to the memory of, oh, this means that. It's a meaning making machine. And then it takes that meaning and it puts it into a pattern recognition machine. And it says, oh, this happened before. And so now I have to respond in this way, so that way I can survive, right? So for example, if you tell your kids to get off of the video game or the tablet and they don't listen to you, you start getting this upwelling of energy in your body where you're like, okay, I'm feeling anger come up, right? I feel like this tension in my chest. I feel this, like, heat rising in my body. I feel my fists clench. I feel my teeth clenched down, right? So those are all bodily sensations that follow with the emotion. Emotion is energy in motion, it is sensations. Then we have a belief about that thing. Like, I'm upset about this thing, this situation connected with my bodily sensation. And that belief about what the situation is affects how we're thinking about it, and how we're thinking about it affects our action. Our action creates our outcome, right? So when we go all the way back to the nervous system set point, maybe when you were a kid, you weren't listened to. Maybe when you were a kid, your parents always told you, just go over there, I don't care. Or like, yeah, that's nice, I don't really need to see it. Like if you're like, oh, Dad, let me show you my, my drawing or whatever. And they're like, yeah, whatever. When you aren't heard, seen, or believed, those are micro traumas that happen in attachment. Those are attachment wounds. And they show up in our life as us yelling at our kids, as us overworking ourselves, as us burning ourselves out, as us not feeding ourselves. and so many different ways. And so what ends up happening is when we stop at the thought and we don't go back to the nervous system and the belief, through the belief, right? And through the emotion, through the sensation in our body, we can't get to the nervous system set point. And so we end up in this loop over and over and over and over again, doing the same things, having the same results, because we didn't change the subconscious control settings. And so through somatic work, through presencing with those emotions, those feelings, those sensations, we can start to shift what's going on in our system. And so it's really important to have very intentional tools around those things so we can break that cycle and get out of that loop, and then know what we can do next, and not just like, I don't believe that anymore, I'm not reacting the same way, but what do I do now, right? Like, don't just tell me to stop doing that, give me what I should do instead. So in order to create a new cycle, first, we just have to be aware of it, right? We have to just know what's going on. We need to truly, in order to truly shift our parenting styles, it shows up as our ability to regulate our own emotions and to understand our own emotions. And when we can do that, then that allows us to change how we're parenting. It changes how we work, how we show up and manage our stress. And then it also helps to break those generational cycles and struggles and empowers our children to have safe attachments to us. So the next piece of this is small, sustainable changes. Our body does not like to have massive changes. Sorry, my cat wants to try and jump up here. Real life problems. I will show you her because she's distracting me. So, this is Floppy. Anyways, so small sustainable changes in our body. When we're trying to deal with homeostasis, we have a set point, same as our nervous system, right? Like your body has a normal resting heart rate. It has a normal resting breathing rate. It has a weight that it likes to be at. It has all these things, right? It has a behavior pattern like it likes to be in. And so if we try to make massive shifts right away, our body's going to send up red flags that say, no, something's wrong. But if we have small, sustainable shifts that we can do over time and continue to do them over time, that becomes the true measure of how much we can change. It allows us to truly make the shifts that we need to make and make them last long enough for our brain to literally start to reshape itself, our nervous system to reshape itself, because there are literally thousands of little connections in our brain that have to be literally adjusted and addressed. And so it's so important to have small sustainable changes. And also, like, if we don't account for the whole manifestation, like we don't account for, the inner reality and our outer world, the small sustainable changes aren't sustainable. They if you don't account for the whole thing, it just becomes another thing that you're trying to rely on willpower to do. And our willpower fails us because the second we're stressed out, the second we're emotional about something, the emotions and our stress system wins out. It just is what it is. So in order to also help make that change, on top of doing small sustainable changes, it's really about getting support and accountability. Because again, going back to how humans work, co-regulation is humongous. It is, you can't do the healing thing on your own. I've tried, and really what it ends up being is avoidance instead of having somebody to help hold you in that space. And yes, we can do a lot of the work on our own, but really most of our wounds come in relationships. And so if we don't learn how to have a healthy relationship, how are we supposed to then have healthy relationships with our kids? And how are we supposed to heal the wounds that came about in our relationships? So you have to have a new example in your life, right? You have to replace it with new good thoughts and new good experiences. So let's talk about how I do this for my pupils. So throughout the work that I do with moms, I integrate what I call the empowerment cycle. And I created the empowerment cycle based on several things that I just thought would be the most supportive. So this includes permaculture principles, and permaculture in general is a system of creating resilient, sustainable, regenerative human environments by mimicking natural ecosystems and focusing on earth care, people care, and fair share. And so when you have a permaculture system, what ends up happening is you, in the beginning, you have some work, right? And you're going to have work. But the reality is once that system is established, it almost runs itself. And so looking at permaculture principles to put into how we create sustainable change for our lives was a huge piece of this. The next is natural cycles and seasons, including our own menstrual cycle and the seasons of the year: spring, summer, winter, fall. Positive coaching principles and functional medicine, and so much more. And so we go through this cycle over and over again. And I wanted to make sure I integrated things that were super key to us creating these sustainable changes. And so in the beginning of everything, we want to have this time where we're not actually doing anything, really. Like, we want to just observe and plan and create and try things. And if we don't have this space of a quote unquote a fertile void where we're not trying to tackle all of our big issues, and we're just sitting back and watching, like, oh, that's what I normally do. What ends up happening is we keep ourselves in a burnout cycle because we're just doing things, we're trying the next trendy thing, and we're not considering what our actual life is, what our own needs are, what our personalities are, what we're good at, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, what our kids' strengths and weaknesses are. Do I have the support I need? Do I not have the support I need? How can I talk to people? How can I not talk to people? So on and so forth, right? But once we establish this awareness, then we can go into making really intentional shifts. So the nourish and remove is what comes next. We need to be able to pull things out that are no longer serving us and to replace them with good things. So that's not just about food, and food is so important, but it's also about relationships. And like how we behave in our relationships. It's not just like kick everybody to the curb and say, screw you, I'm done with you because I'm evolving, although maybe it does. you know, but it could be, I'm going to start talking to my husband in this way because I want him to feel safe being around me. Or I'm going to start asking for help in this way, or whatever that might be, right? It might also be including solitude and time alone and being quiet. One of the biggest lessons I had in this last year was I'm not actually giving myself the amount of time, uninterrupted time, to really go through and process a lot of things and release them from my body. So that's another huge piece of this. The next one is maintain and grow. How do we keep going? How do we make sure that this is the right thing for us? How do we, keep the good work up, right? And then ending this one cycle with time to celebrate, to rest, to harvest the fruits of your labor, right? And really, our brain wants to be rewarded, right? Our body wants that reward. And so if we don't see a positive effect of what's going on, we don't get something good out of it, we're not going to keep doing it. It is just how we work. And that's totally fine. It's okay. So that is the cycle that I take people through when I do work with them. And it's helped me maintain my own well-being. And it's also allowed for us to break out of cycles of burnout. So what are some tools that you can use specifically? So nervous system healing tools and somatics, they go kind of hand in hand, but they're a little bit different sometimes. So we're getting at the subconscious beliefs, we're reworking them, we're changing them, and we're using somatic tools to be able to do that. So things like presencing to your own emotions, staying with the sensation, becoming aware, going from your body up to your mind, and also using your body as a guide. And that's such an impactful way, because if you're like me or some of the other people that I know, you can talk yourself out of anything. You can be like, oh yeah, well, it wasn't that bad because blah, 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 right? So being in your body, it doesn't lie. Your body will not lie to you. It cannot lie to you. Your brain can tell you stories all day long, but your body is not going to lie to you. And so as you get into this work and you start to realize, like, oh man, I've been tricking myself big time. and you start really being aware and healing those things, they come out of your body and your body stops having so much to hold on to and deal with and work with. And so you have more energy and you have more vitality and you have less pain and you have less stress and so much more. And then the other thing that's super important, because again, coming back to, yes, there's all this emotional stuff, but there's also the systems and the container to hold it all in and make sure that you aren't missing important parts of your life, that you don't have to make so many decisions every day, that you don't have to be the one to do all of the mental load, right? So we have to match the inner and the outer world. And so it's both yes and also making sure you have systems that work for you, specifically you and your family, not just some idea that somebody else gave you. Okay. And most importantly, again, is community support, because motherhood is honestly just so much better when we do it together. And so I cannot state how valuable having a community around us as mothers is. Again, we go back to the village, and we know we don't have a village, and we know we don't have the kind of support we want to have. But the reality is it's up to us at this point to make that shift happen. It is no longer we can't wait for somebody else to do it. It is up to us. And so let me know in the chat if you've been craving a real village to be a part of. Yes, 100%. Amazing. So I want to introduce you to Self-Care on Tap. So Self-Care on Tap is a private community of moms that is going to be there to help you stop surviving and start thriving by creating a life that gives back to you just as much as you give back to everyone else in your life. It's going to be full of monthly resource drops and quarterly workshops and more. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So I want to invite you into feeling confident, at ease, and supported, energized, healthier, more connected, and more grounded. And I want to invite you to let go of rushing around everywhere and people pleasing and not having boundaries and feeling exhausted and alone, and connecting your worth to your productivity, and also relying on perfectionism to motivate you to get things done. And I want to invite you into becoming part of a private community, because our nervous system's job is safety through connection, and we can intentionally seek out a community that helps us grow and heal. It's so beautiful. Being a part of a community is so helpful, because not only are you getting that support, like verbally or whatever that looks like, right? But you also get access to many minds and many hearts and many nervous systems, because the reality is we all go through stuff, right? And when we have people to just sit and be with whose nervous systems are regulated and feel good, then we're essentially crowdfunding our knowledge, our wisdom, and our support. We borrow each other's nervous systems to help us get into better states. And it just really, truly helps us through these difficult times. We can problem solve together. We can hold space for each other, which is ultimately one of the most healing things that we can be a part of or participate in. This is different than a Facebook community because it is ours. It's different than Instagram because Instagram and Facebook and Meta and TikTok don't have control over it. This is our thing, and we get to talk about what we need to talk about in a way, in this beautiful container. And all the resources are held in one place. So you're not going to go over here and then over there and then over here. It's going to be in this beautiful container. And the software is called Heartbeat. So let's talk about the resource drops. So each monthly resource drop is created with busy moms in mind. So on average, it's going to be about 15 to 30 minutes of an audio-friendly tool or practice that can help you get through the empowerment cycle with intention. There'll be things like nervous system and somatic practices, guided meditations, self-care tools, and more. I've been in this industry for over 14 years now. And so we're going to take all the different pieces that I've learned and practiced and done, and I'm going to give them to you, because the reality is like, I've been there and I've done that, and I've done so many of the things that I thought were like, yes, this is helping me. But the reality was that I was using so many of the tools in a way to avoid dealing with the problems, right? So I love yoga, but I love yoga because it let me put up with more crap. And that is not what I want you to be able to do. Like, yes, I want you to build capacity so that when life rocks your boat, like you can deal with it. You can, if you flip over, you can pull your boat back up, right? You don't have to feel like you're drowning. But I also don't want you to live with essentially the iceberg of the emotional wounding that we have. So when we look at oftentimes what we're doing in self-care is we get the tip of the iceberg, but there's so many other things. And so when you use these practices intentionally and you know how to use them, you get into some more of that deeper work, right? So in the quarterly workshop, speaking of deeper work, in the quarterly workshop, we're going to dive into topics that just need more attention and more time. Things like hormones and stress, understanding the nervous system, creating conscious systems, conscious discipline, working with our inner children, nourishing ourselves, and so much more. I've already started talking to I have a lineup of amazing workshops that are already in the works right now, and we're getting them set up and ready to go for you as we go through each of these. And they're again going to take you through important pieces of self-care that, we may not have access to, or there's so much information out there that it's hard to get, like what do we actually do about this? And then also you're going to get first and best. So as a member, you're going to get access to this new offering, all the new offerings first and with the best offers. So there is more to come. This is the first step in all of this beautiful work, but I wanted to let you know that in the future, there's going to be more and you're going to get the best options for it. You can also upgrade to a group coaching session monthly. You can get the support you're needing and make the changes quicker, and also just have more accountability and partnership and being held in a more intentional space. So I want to take you through one more practice today of stepping into your 10 out of 10 motherhood together. So when we go back to the rating we gave ourselves earlier, how would you rate your motherhood right now, 1 out of 10? So thinking about the beliefs we talked about earlier, your struggles with mothering in our society and the experience is out of alignment of where we want to be with our kids. So what I want you to do is take a moment to think about that place, right? So what is your number, right? And then maybe journal about it. Take a moment to write out, like, I'm feeling like this about my motherhood because X, Y, Z, right? Maybe the most distressing things that you're thinking about right now. Is it money? Is it time? Is it energy? Is it emotions? Is it support? Is it just the air we're breathing right now politically? Like what things are giving you cause for concern? And then I want you to take a moment to feel into this and feel how it feels in your body right now. What sensations are coming up? So what we want to do in this before we really start is we want to really feel the sensation in our body and not the story. Okay, so we're journaling the story out so that way we can be present with the emotion itself. So it might feel like, oh, I have a sinking feeling in my gut, or I feel tension around my heart. I feel pressure in my shoulders or my head or whatever it looks like. Okay, so we're going to start with that. I'm going to give you about 90 seconds to feel into this, and then we'll move on to the next thing. Again, stay out of your head. If you're starting to say, like, I feel guilty because, none of that right now. It's all about sensations in your body. It's all about how it's feeling. Do you feel your body shrinking? Do you feel yourself slumping? Is your heart rate going up? Are your hands getting cold? Notice if anything is coming up, any stories are coming up. And just put them in your back pocket for later. It'll be fine. Okay. So what I would like you to do is start to come back to this place right now. And now I want you to think about in your head and maybe write out on your piece of paper, what would it look like? What would it feel like? Who would you be? How would you hold yourself in your 10 out of 10 motherhood? Who are you when you are having the most fulfilling, fun, loving time with your kids, with your partner, you're balancing out your personal pursuits with your home life, and so on and so forth? Like, how does that feel? And then I want you to write out a few things like, it feels amazing. We do this, we do that. I feel like this, whatever, fill in the blank. Okay. So go ahead and take a few moments to do that. You can pause this at any point in time and go back to it. I'm going to give you a few more seconds here. Okay. So what I want you to do is pick a side. So like maybe on your left side is your like where your motherhood is at right now. And on your right side is your 10 out of 10 motherhood. And I want you to be able to kind of shift bodily back and forth between the two, whether that's just putting more weight on your hip or if you're standing on your feet. And I want you to, from your 10 out of 10 motherhood, I want you to literally lean into this 10 out of 10 motherhood. And I want you to feel in your body what it feels like to be a 10 out of 10 mom, right? Even if you're upset, you're handling it amazing. Even when you're stressed out and life throws some stuff at you, you're able to dodge most of it and you're able to deal with it. And you're able to, like, I got this. I got myself. I got my family. I know what I'm doing. It's okay. And even if I don't know what I'm doing, I can figure it out. I have support. I have resources, right? What does that feel like? Feel it in your body. Maybe there's an image, maybe there's a memory, maybe there's a color that goes with it or a shape or whatever. And I want you to, from this place, this 10 out of 10, look towards where you're at right now. And I want you to offer words of encouragement from where you are now to there. Ask yourself. So imagine maybe this is a younger version of you, right? The one that's right now that's not as well resourced, not your 10 out of 10. Ask it, like, is there anything? Is there anything she wants to tell you, right? Do you have anything she needs from you? Is there any emotions that are coming up for her? And from your 10 out of 10 place, tell her, it's okay. I've got you. We totally can figure this out. And even if you don't feel like it right now, that's okay too. It's okay to be stressed out. It's okay to be frustrated about the situation. You are perfect just the way you are. And when we validate ourselves, see what happens, see how you feel, offer up what you're needing right now to yourself. I'm going to give you a few moments to do that. And if anything is coming up, if you're, I'm going to say this is your inner child coming up in this non 10 out of 10, right? It's this inner younger version of mothering comes up and it tells you, like, I don't want to talk to you or whatever, something negative. It's not giving you information or whatever that might be. That's okay. Just sit in your 10 out of 10, giving it the love that it needs, sending it that love, being present with it, allowing for whatever comes up to come up. It's okay. There's nothing you need to do differently. Everything is okay just the way it is right now. So take a few moments to close that out, offer a hug, connection, see if this part of you wants you to come back again. centered in your 10 out of 10. And when you're ready, come back and maybe take a few moments to write out about how you're feeling, what came up for you. Even if you're feeling like this was stupid, that's totally okay. When we hit resistance, we know we're on our edge, which is perfect. That is exactly where we want to be able to get to. So I want to remind you that pouring from an empty cup never filled anyone else's up. Taking time for yourself does not take away from someone else. In fact, it actually helps you give the best of yourself. And you're honestly too busy to not do things that are effective, right? Like if we're trying to do a bunch of things that are ineffective, we don't have time for that. We don't have time, we don't have energy. So if you're ready to say yes to yourself, to refill your own cup, to become part of a community, to tap into your own inner source, and to have support with you anytime you need it, I want to invite you into Self-Care on Tap. And there are two options here for you. So the Source Collective, which is $25 a month. It's the private community, the audio-friendly resources dropped monthly, quarterly workshops, and exclusive offers, and getting first dibs on new programs. And I'll probably drop more in there. Anyways, and then also the Wellspring Circle. So the Wellspring Circle is going to be a monthly coaching group that you get more support, more intentional support, plus everything else from the Source Collective. So if that sounds like something that you want to do, you can click on the links that are going to be floating around in different places. So you'll get a follow-up email. You'll also see it on my website on the Self-Care for Tap page. If you go onto Instagram, there's a connection to it. So there's many, many ways to get into this place. And then this is the extra special little oomph that I want to invite you into because I'm so excited about this. If you join in the Self-Care on Tap coming up in the next few days, I'm going to give a couple of days extra because of all the kerfuffles that have gone with this. I want to invite you into tapping into source. Tapping into source is, ignore those 48 hours, I'm giving you extra time. Tapping into source is 30 days of drops of wisdom in a private telegram group called Tapping into Source. It is a container that is going to be so special. We're going to be walking through some of the biggest roadblocks to our well-being with high touch point daily drops. And this is going to be so incredibly supportive and nourishing. I honestly, when I was trying to do the thing where you're like, oh, it's valued at this, but it's, like that whole thing. I couldn't put a price on it because I'm in a container like this for business. And it has been one of the most amazing experiences because not only is it giving me information, right? So not only am I going to distill the journey down for you and talk about the main things that you need to begin in order to thrive and make the shift from chaos to calm. You're also getting all the years of experience that I have and all the practices and modalities, but you're also getting to be in my energy and that energy of everyone who's participating in it. And to be perfectly honest with you, that piece alone is so impactful. And so when I was like, oh, I'm going to try and put a price on it, there's no way I can put a price on that. How much money would you pay to be around a really close friend all the time who's super supportive of you? Right? That's invaluable. So I want to invite you into that. And I want you to know that I'm only doing this for the people who watch through to the end. And then I'm closing the doors. I'm going to give it about a week after we open the doors of Self-Care on Tap officially April 1st, but you're getting a sneak peek in it right now. And then if you are ready to say yes to a thriving family and a thriving self, then you are invited into this healing community. So you can click the link below in the chat if you're here live, or you can look for it in all the emails and the follow-ups and all that kind of stuff. It is everywhere. You can also message me. You can either DM me at Althea Farah, or you can email me at beth@altheafarah.com. And you'll get all the information you need. So I am so excited to invite you into Self-Care on Tap. and hopefully into tapping into source, and into this beautiful community, into all the supportive tools that I can possibly give you. And it's going to develop and grow over time and become this amazing, beautiful thing. So thank you so much for being here with me through this all. I hope that you had a wonderful experience, and I cannot wait to see you on the inside. Thanks so much, Mama. Bye.